Hi guys, and welcome to this video. I hope you're all doing super well. Thank you so much once again for joining me right here on my channel. So today guys, we are going to be talking about the Colt clan, and the Colt clan are a family where there was 4 generations of incest. So I'm going to put out a disclaimer in this video that if you are triggered obviously by cases of incest, kind of sexual abuse or anything like that, of course feel free not to watch this video. So the cult actually started with Tim and June Colt, who were originally from New Zealand and actually emigrated to Australia. So we are going to Australia guys for today's case. Apparently, in order to protect the identities of the Colt clan, Colt was solely like a pseudonym, like a fake name that was used during the court case, but their real surname is different to this essentially. However, this case is known as the Colt clan case. So June was born in 1948 and Tim was born in 1943. And as I mentioned earlier, they were originally from New Zealand and they relocated to Australia around the 1970s. And they were actually brother and sister. And they had 7 children together who were Martha, Frank, Paula, Cherry, Rhonda, Betty and Charlie. So at this time when they had the kids, they were living in New South Wales in Australia, and after having the kids, they decided to relocate to Victoria in Australia still. And at that time, that's when Betty was around 12 years old and Tim started to sexually abuse Betty. So the whole time that the family had been together, the 7 children didn't actually know that their mother and father were a product of incest. They didn't know that their parents were actually brother and sister, right? So this has been always kept a secret. The parents never told them. So basically what happened is in 1997, so when Betty was an adult, she had a little girl, and she actually went to June, so her mother, and asked her if there was a possibility that she could donate a kidney to, you know, the granddaughter, to the little girl. June was like, I can't do that. So Betty was like confused. She was thinking like, why doesn't my mother want to donate a kidney to my daughter who needs a transplant? And so yeah, Betty's like becoming confused because she's like, is it just that my mum's scared to donate a kidney? Like what is the issue? Is my mum got some medical condition that I don't know about? Like, Betty was really confused. So that's when June turns around and is like, I can't donate a kidney because me and your dad are actually brother and sister, so this is why we can't donate a kidney. So basically how the family ended up being investigated is because they were always moving around, and over the years the family ended up growing to over 40 members, and they were always moving to different areas of Australia. And every time they were moving around, they were living in like really sort of bad, poor, disgusting conditions, like in just dirt. And you know, a lot of people, like their neighbours that would see them, would question what the hell is going on. And there's like over 40 members of a family living like this. Like, it was something very strange. And that's where people started to think, what is going on here? One of the children was at school, so the children still did go to school. And what happened is there was a young child that overheard a conversation that was between one of the children from the Colt clan and like another classmate, right? So what the child heard was that the girl from the Colt clan was telling the other classmate that they actually live in the bush and that she's pregnant. And at this time the children were very small, right? They were probably like, I don't know, like 10 years old, 11 years old or something. And then she's also told the classmate that it's her brother that's fathered the child. Now, it was actually in 2010 that this child was overheard saying that she's pregnant and her brother's the father and all of this. But prior to that, so between the 90s and 2010, all of the family members were engaging in intercourse with each other. So you would have children sleeping with adults, you would have brothers sleeping with sisters, uncles sleeping with nieces, mothers sleeping with sons. Like, it was just a complete mess. And because all the family members were obviously sleeping together, and they were conceiving children together, a lot of these children were born with like genetic defects, and the children, because they were living in these very poor conditions, often had like fungal infections. Some of the women would miscarry as well, and it was just a really dire situation. And they had no running water, no hygiene products, no toilets, no showers, so there was no sanitation basically within the building that they were living in, bearing in mind there's like over 40 of them there engaging in all of this. And honestly, it was just horrendous. And it has even been said that as a pastime, the children, and this is honestly so horrible, and I'm warning anyone who loves animals, like this is very disturbing. So instead of playing with like toys etc., the children would find animals and they would mutilate the animals and cut off the animals' private parts, which for children, I'm trying to think, how does that concept even come to light? Now, because they were moving around a lot, there were young girls that were pregnant in the cult clan, etc. As I said earlier, it did cause rise to suspicions. However, when people would ask about, oh, like, who's the father of that daughter's child and who's the father of this, they would just say, oh, okay, this is an outsider that, you know, was passing through the town. My daughter slept with them and she got pregnant, when actually the daughter was pregnant through her brother, uncle, father, grandfather, or someone else within the actual family. June ended up passing away in 2001 and Tim ended up passing away in 2009. So because they passed, there had to be a new leader for the cult clan, right? So actually Betty was the one that took over and started to lead the whole family, right? And she had 12 children with her younger brother Charlie. Now we've arrived at 2010 and the police have started an investigation. So after hearing that little girl at school and that she'd had a conversation saying her brother had impregnated her, and she actually said she didn't know which of her brothers had actually impregnated her. So the school teachers, they raised the alarm bell, they contacted the police, and the police started to lead an investigation on the cult clan, right? So this started in 2010. So they started observing where the family lived, etc., and they discovered that they were living in these squalid conditions, in these sort of encampment shack kind of houses really, and there was 38 of them living together, again with no sanitation, no toilets, no showers, nothing. Now when the police decided to go to the property with a search warrant and everything, and obviously I told you guys that Betty had 12 children with her younger brother Charlie, right? But when the police actually got there, they discovered that Betty also had children with her older brother Bobby and her younger brother Billy. So actually Betty had children with 3 of her brothers. So basically what happened is the police and social services, they took all the children away and put them into care because it was a situation of neglect, incest, sexual abuse, amongst other things. So they took all the children away and they kind of left the adults at the property, although there was still an ongoing investigation. And while the children were in care, Betty and one of Betty's sons actually had been taken away, one of the other brothers. And while all the kids were in care and Billy was, basically Betty and Bobby were trying to make plans to get Billy out of care, and they were making a whole like sort of dodgy plan together basically to get him free. The older generations, the adults of the cult clan, tried to re-establish contact with the children when they were in care, and that was stopped immediately by the courts because obviously this was a terrible situation, right? So there was no way that the adults were going to have contact with these children again. And when the children went into care, they started displaying very disturbing behaviour. So basically the children would display behaviour of a sexual nature towards their siblings and towards people that weren't their siblings. So people like that were caring for them and overseeing them, like the adults in the care organisation that were overseeing them, they were actually displaying sexual behaviour towards those people that were looking after them. Now Betty, who was really the main leader of the cult after her, the cult clan, after her parents passed, guys. She ended up getting sentenced for everything, and I couldn't find how long her sentence was, but she did get a prison sentence. And when she got released from prison, remember she originally, her parents were from New Zealand, so she was supposed to get deported back to New Zealand, right? But she fought that deportation. She didn't want to go back there. She wanted to stay in Australia, so she actually fought her deportation, and she actually won, amazingly, given that she was a criminal. So she was given the right to stay, have residency in Australia. And apparently she now lives in New South Wales with one of her daughters, Raylene, and 2 other male family members. And it said that she's tried over the years to contact other relatives of the cult clan on Facebook and social media. And that was the case of the cult clan, guys. Now, honestly, this case was very disturbing, and the thing is by the time, I forgot to mention that Betty came out of prison, she was facing deportation. This was only in 2015, it's not that long ago. So between the 90s and late 2000s, this was going on in Australia, and it took years before it came onto the authorities' radar. And it was only because a little boy had overheard this girl saying she's pregnant from one of her brothers and she doesn't know which one, that was the main thing that really set off the authorities. And it's really bizarre how basically June and Tim's children didn't know that their parents were brother and sister. Betty obviously asked her mum for a kidney for one of her daughters, who, by the way, all the children are born out of incest anyway. And then Betty's confused that her mother is born out of incest. Like, it's really all confusing because they're all born out of incest, but then they're confused that their parents were, got together and are incestuous as well. It's just crazy. Anyway, guys, please feel free to leave your comments down below on this case. It's quite disturbing, I know. And you're welcome to leave me suggestions for criminal cases or strange cases that you'd like me to cover, or cults as well, different cults that you'd like me to look into further, maybe lesser known international cults as well. I'm happy to research those. And I will see you very, very soon, guys, for another video.